Hey, so if you didn't know who I was, my name is Jaden, and today I'm going to be doing a little video essay on the final girl trope and also just an overall discussion about sexuality in slasher films. So let's just jump right into it, shall we? So who is the final girl? We know them, we love them. Sidney Prescott, Laurie Strode, Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street, the classics, the final girls. And the genre of the slasher has evolved and changed throughout the years, but at its core, it deals a lot with women and their sexuality and how women are punished for being sexual beings. So I'm just going to talk about that, and also just some weird little things that the slasher genre kind of throws in there. The final girl in more of the 80s to 90s to early 2000s was more like a symbol of virginity almost, which is odd because part of the aspect of the slasher film and why it's so popular with a younger audience is because of the sex aspect of it, because there are people having sex in the movie and these people usually die, but some of the teenagers come to the movie to see that sex aspect. They're like, oh, I saw that this movie has a pair of boobs in it, that's crazy, right? So people know that sex sells, but also they're trying to send a message hey, if you have sex, premarital sex, you're gonna die. So these final girls are portrayed as innocent and a virgin. This perfect woman specimen who's not interested in men. They care about their career and their education. They're not interested in sex and boys. They're a little bit more tomboy-y, and they're hard to get. They're a challenge for men to try to get them because they're not interested and they're more focused on what they want to do, and they're not interested in sex. They haven't had sex. They're a virgin. For men, it's like a fantasy to try to catch these women and make these women submissive. It's like a prize to sleep with these women who are hard to get. And that's a little odd, isn't it to have, because in hindsight, looking at the big picture, the final girl in itself could be seen as a feministic thing, but there's the way that they were portrayed. If you really look deep into it, you're like, oh, I don't know about that, because you're like, yes, queen, when she's killing the men, but how we got there is just a little fishy. And ultimately these final girls kill the villain, but the villain also has some sexual motive specifically for the final girl too, because she's the one that he can't get, with Michael, with Freddy, with Ghostface, with all of these in the first movies. I'm not talking about sequels, because the sequels go crazy, but that's a whole different video. But in these original movies of these slasher franchises, the villain the entire time is trying to get this specific final girl. They try over and over and over again and can't succeed in killing them. But with their friends, who seem more promiscuous and have more of a sexuality in the movie, they die first. And they're an easy target. It seems like they want women to be like the final girl. Be submissive, but not too much. Also stand your ground, but also play hard to get, but also don't be a prude. And stuff like that. So it's kind of just a cat and mouse game with the killing, but also with the sexual aspect of it, because also throughout the movie she's pressured to have sex with someone who may be the villain. We don't know yet, but there's the sexual aspect of it, of one trying over and over again to be killed, but also trying over and over again to have sex throughout the film. The women can't like have sex and enjoy it because it's a masculine thing, and being the dominant one in a sexual relationship is a masculine trait, and women can't do that. And if a woman tries to dominate or like have sex on her account, it's not gonna go well because they're gonna be disciplined by the men. They need to be put in their place type thing. So, you know, the chase of it all and to getting the final girl to where they want them is more to discipline them more than to let the women win, you know? But ultimately the women do win, so that's something. Just like I said, the end result is something that we can cheer for, but how we get there, you know, is a little fishy. So some of the famous examples, I'm gonna talk about the big three, Sydney, Lori, and Nancy. Sydney is an interesting one because she came later in the game, and she's a kind of a more modern version of the final girl because, you know, Wes Craven did do Nightmare on Elm Street, so when he made Scream, it was kind of more of a parody of the slasher genre and kind of poking fun at it, while also having a commentary on like the social aspects of the genre itself and the final girl trope. Sydney is a little bit different because she has had sex. She has had sex before, but she kind of still plays into this trope of being a virgin and being innocent because she hasn't had sex since her mom died. And that's something that's been weighing over her and her boyfriend Billy's relationship the entire movie, about how she hasn't had sex since her mom died, which was like a year before the movie took place or so. And when you really look at it, it's kind of an interesting thing because Sydney's mom has a weird backstory to her that allegedly her mom was like sleeping around and cheating on her dad, so that she deserved to die because she was a slut. Could be said. I'm not gonna say that, but it could, in the context of a film, that's kind of how it looks. That like she was murdered, and the way that Sydney framed her murderer, Sydney justified putting that guy in prison for being like, well, there was no other option. This guy had to rape and kill my mom, not my mom might have cheated on my dad. The precedent was set for Sydney that sex equals death because her mom had sex with other men that weren't her dad, and then she died because of that. She tried to justify it saying, oh no, she got raped, but when people started talking and being like, oh, but she was a slut, oh, she was a whore, she was thinking, oh, was my mom really a slut? Was my mom really a whore? And should I stop having sex because that might happen to me too? But no, she had to have been raped because that was my mom. Throughout the entire movie, Billy and Stu kind of like hold this not having sex thing over her head. Billy especially, because ultimately they do have sex in the movie. And you know, that was the cat and mouse game because it's later revealed, obviously, that Billy and Stu are the murderers. So they caught her. They got her in the sexual aspect. So the one thing left to do was to kill her, but then they ultimately weren't successful because of a lot of issues with Billy and Stu's dynamic. But that's not important to this because we're talking about the women here. Okay. Throughout the movie, she's just threatened by these ideas that her mom wasn't as pure and maybe she has to cleanse herself and be pure, like, so she doesn't end up dying like her mom. Because kind of in the context of Scream, since she stopped having sex, like, she wasn't gonna die. But like Tatum, her best friend, who's clearly very sexually active throughout the movie, she dies almost immediately when the murders like start ramping up because she had sex. Also, Drew Barrymore's character, I forget her name because she's like literally in 5 seconds of the movie, but you know, she was like, oh, I don't have a boyfriend, blah 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 blah, and then she was like, oh, I do have a boyfriend, and blah blah blah, and that's the moment when it was like, oh yeah, then she deserves to die because she's having sex, obviously. Having that pressure of being labeled as a slut and like sex is bad and I will die because I have sex, and that's slut behavior, was weighing on Sydney's head. So when she actually does give in and have the sex, then she kind of thinks about it and she's like, actually no, that's like really stupid, and just kills them, which, fair. So yeah, and then the whole thing of that it was actually Billy that killed her mom because blah blah blah, their parents cheated, whatever, not important. So we're moving on. Laurie Strode, she is the pioneer, she is the it girl, she is what every bitch wanted to be, like, oh my god, icon. She didn't care about men at all. She didn't care about sex. She didn't want to have sex. She wasn't interested in it. She was a motherly figure because she would babysit kids and she actually enjoyed it. She was like, hey, I like having kids and I like being a mom-ish and I don't want to have sex. The fuck? Are you for real? Sorry, my cats have entered again. But in terms of Laurie's friend group, she was the oddball. She didn't have sex, so she was a prude. And all of her friends had sex, and it was so fun. And they all like boyfriends, and they're sneaking out in each other's houses. But ultimately, these friends got murdered by Michael because they had sex, obviously. So they had to die because the whole thing with Michael is that he's just like weird around sex. He's just weird about it. That's the only way I can put it nicely. He's just weird about it. He just like feels a little silly about it because the opening scene is literally him killing his sister because she had sex. So he's always like just been like, I don't like that. Stop that. And then he just has a lot of anger about it, so he kills people. But, for some reason, just hates sexual beings, like hates sexual people in general. Because he kills both men and women who do sexual acts. But, the women are just more drawn out because that's just how it is in this genre. But, you could say that Laurie survived the movie because she never had sex in Halloween. She never had sex. All of her friends that died had sex in the movie. So her survival can be attributed to her purity, to her innocence, and that she didn't commit these sinful acts. And, at the time, the government was really trying to, like, make kids not have sex. And, putting this message out that, hey, if you have sex, this guy in a mask is gonna come and stab you, kind of, like, will put a damper on, like, getting it up. So I guess it worked. I don't know. But that was just kind of the vibe at the time, that they were like, kids don't have sex. And this is why some kid is going to come and murder you. So, having a powerful female lead that's like, I don't want to have sex because that's boring. I want to babysit and do my homework. That's like trying to push that image through society's throat a little bit. The last of the big three, Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, Nancy straight up told Johnny Depp that she couldn't have sex with him because Freddie said no. And the fact that Freddie was like a child molester and he was preying upon teenage girls. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but like, Freddie being a child molester for one, and then attacking this one girl who won't have sex because he told her to, and then he's trying to chase her again, this cat and mouse game of like trying to reach the unattainable. And for Freddie, it's a little more enhanced. Even though he's dead, it's not justifying. I'm not justifying because he's still an old man, but he is dead, and he's still lusting after the unattainable because she's a child and he's an adult, regardless of the death and the ghost of it all, and whether it was real or not. But having this be a plot point where she's not having sex because this old guy told her not to, but also she's not gonna have sex with Freddie either. She needs to be tied down. This woman has to have sex, but she has to have sex with an older man, and she has to be submissive about it. She can't it can't be her idea. So, you know, all of the men in the movie are just kind of really stupid. The girls are like, yo, you can't fall asleep. This bitch is gonna come in your dreams and like murder you for real. And they're like, you're so funny. You're so silly. That's crazy. And then they go to bed. And then Johnny Depp gets sucked into the bed. Like, they're just stupid and they don't listen to the women. So it's also kind of a commentary on the genre itself, being like, y'all, just listen, bro. Like, you stupid. Just listen. Open your ears and listen to the women, because they're spitting facts. And also, the men in this movie ain't spitting facts, because why you listen to a child molester about whether a teenage girl should have sex or not? The next topic I'm going to cover is the slut best friend. The slut best friend. We all know them. We all love them. And I'm happy that this character is kind of dissolving a little bit more as time moves on, because, like, all of us are sluts. It doesn't matter. Like, shut up. Just because a girl has big boobs does not mean she's a slut. So, let's get that out of there. Our final girl always has a whore best friend. She's always sleeping with someone. She got big boobs. She's pretty. She's blonde most of the time. You know, like, she's the it girl, but she's also a slut. So we don't want to be like her, because, like, she's a slut. And we need to be pure and be innocent. But also, she's like, so pretty and, like, so cute. And we love her. But also, we hate her because she has sex. I think, like, feminist, like, film theory about it kind of is, like, switching it over. Like, yes, she's serving, she's slaying. We don't care that she has sex. But, like, back in the day, it was like, oh, she's bad news, that's why she died type beat. But I'm glad that we're like, Tatum Riley was actually like a queen. Like she was actually the realest one in this movie, actually. Like, why'd she die? Like, she was the realest. She was always like protecting Sydney. She was always being a good friend to Sydney. She always was there for Sydney and like told her, yeah, Billy's bad news. Like, don't hang out with that bro. He's acting weird and stuff like that. And then when Billy was like in jail, she was like, yeah, like, stay away from him. And then when she didn't, she was like, yo, what the fuck? Why are you still with this bitch? He, like, probably killed your mom. He probably is killing everyone else. So, like, Tatum Riley kind of queen for that. But, you know, she fell victim to the formula because she was pretty, she was blonde, she had sex, and she died. And, you know, the way that she dresses, she wore short skirts, she wore crop tops, she wore tight stuff to show off her curves and whatever. So, you know, she's just very promiscuous, and she is putting everything out there, you know, like, stupid. So, like, the scene where she died, it was just, like, a little fishy because he, like, thought it was Stu, and she was like, you want to come play Psycho Killer? And then the whole, like, line of, oh, I'm going to be in a sequel, that was for a gag. Like, that was obviously for a gag. Her death in itself just was a little questionable because she was in a doggy door and then, you know, she was, like, halfway through it, but her ass was too big, so she couldn't fit all the way through. So, you know, the two perspectives of the death were tits and ass. The whole time. There was no other shot. It was just tits or ass. So, you know, that was a little questionable because, you know, if you got a big tits and a big ass, you gotta die because you have sex. You know, that was kind of the message with that. And kind of the same wavelength in Halloween. You know, Linda and Annie, Laurie's friends, both had sex and then they almost immediately died. Both of them had sex with their boyfriends and then their boyfriend also died, but then their death was strung out more long and hard and detailing every inch of whatever, their body, I guess. And Annie and Linda's death both were sexual. And that's not up for debate because literally Laurie was on the phone while Annie was dying, and Laurie thought that Annie was moaning into the phone and that she was having sex with her boyfriend while she was dying. So, you know, kind of that, like, pleasure, pain thing King was like playing around there. In a way, I feel like it was kind of Michael's way of also taunting Laurie, of like not inherently, but like in the movie's context of like, oh, this girl, she's moaning like she's having sex, and she's like taunting Laurie because Laurie doesn't want to have sex, you know? Michael's kind of rubbing that in Laurie's face of like, oh, you're thinking about sex, like everyone thinks about sex. I know you want to have sex, like I want to have sex, but also I hate everyone that has sex, and you're pure, but you need to have sex, but if you do, you're gonna die type thing. And having like Annie just like be sexual when she's dying is just like a little like, yeah, she's sexual, that's why she's dying right now. And then Linda, of course, while she is dying, she's naked. You can see her boobs. Again, it's just all about the boobs. The boobs are like the main thing with Michael, I think, because he obviously, when he stabbed his sister, boobs. So I don't know if it's something about boobs that really scared Michael, but he needs to get over that, because it's been like how many years now that he's been like running around, and at least in the first Halloween, it was just like he was just literally killing people because they were having sex. I don't know about the sequels, but you know. The first one's kind of that. Like, it's kind of like, oh, they have sex. Oh, they're gonna die. Like, Michael hates boobs. I don't know. Something about it. In Nightmare on Elm Street, many of the female victims died right after they had sex with their boyfriends. Nancy famously said to Johnny Depp that she didn't want to have sex because Freddie was killing people right after they had sex and they had fallen asleep. Because obviously, if a child molester says, don't have sex, you're not gonna have sex, right? right? If I remember correctly, there's a whole scene where like a girlfriend and a boyfriend have sex, and then they're sleeping in the same bed together, and then that's when he dies, when he's like up on the ceiling. It's been a minute since I've watched this movie. I know that's a scene. I'll fact check it when I'm editing. So, but if I'm not mistaken, I do recall that. It's kind of an interesting thing for Freddie to be a child molester, because you know he is specifically going into either a teenage boy's mind or a teenage girl's mind while they're sleeping after they had sex, sometimes when these people are naked, and kind of like punishes them for having sex as a child molester. And I think with the female aspect, it's a little more intense, just because, you know, having a man come into a teenage girl's mind and kind of punish her for having sex with a teenage boy instead of him. Because I have this kind of feeling that, you know, some pedophiles, when they figure out that like a teenage girl that they've been preying on has had sex before, obviously their image and the aura of it all kind of fades away because of that. But if it's specifically with a teenage boy, that kind of like soils it a little bit more for pedophiles, because they're like, oh, why did she have sex with this kid that doesn't know anything? Why didn't she have sex with someone who's safe with me, who's older, who knows what I'm doing? I had to take that away from her. I need that power of taking that away from her instead of a boy that doesn't understand what that means, type of thing. So I think when he's like punishing these teenage girls for having sex and killing them in their dreams, it's kind of like a way to be like, I should have taken that from you, so I'm now going to take away that life from you. Maybe with the teenage boys as well. I don't know which way Freddy swings, you know. I don't know if he was like mixing it up with both sides. I don't know if it was just the boys. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie, and I haven't watched the sequels. But you know, Freddy was just just kind of a sexual being in general, just like of the way that he was like taunting them. But, you know, being a child molester, and with the feminine aspect of it, I do think it's like a thing of, oh, I should have been the one to take your virginity because it gives me power. But instead, you let someone who doesn't have the power like I do take it from you, so now I'm going to take your life away from you. The next thing I kind of want to talk about is the use of the murder weapon. Famously in the final monologue of the killer, where where the final girl beats the villain, often the villain like kind of uses the murder weapon as like kind of a sexual thing. And you know what? I'll be right back because I have something. You know, I don't know why I didn't have this like this whole time. I feel like I should have had this whole time. This is a prop, by the way. It doesn't hurt me, promise. It's a prop from a movie because I'm a film major. That's why I have this in my house. Not for any other reason, promise. Michael, Ghostface. It's all about the knives, you know? There's kind of a thing about about the stab that's a little bit sexual because it's penetrating into a woman who has sex like a penis. I know, a little bit of a stretch, but if you really think about it, if the killer can't penetrate the woman sexually, and Scream is a little bit of a different case because like the kill was like just the icing on the top of having sex with her. But in other cases, when the villain can't capture the final girl in a sexual way by penetrating them with their appendage, the next best thing is to still enter them, but stabby stabby. Like I was talking about a little bit before, like I'm kind of doing now, the villain's like final monologue before the final girl bests them, they kind of use the murder weapon as a like gesture while they're talking. They kind of like do like a lot of that and a lot of like that, you know, like they use it in a way that's like you would use your hands of like if you're about to make out with someone, you would like touch their chin or their neck or, you know, put their hand, but they're doing that with the knife. They're crossing it upon the face, they're caressing the neck, they're doing all of that. So it's just like a little intimate thing, but just with a knife because, you know, it's intimate with a hand, but if you replace it with a knife, that's scary. But also, like, the cross between that is a little interesting because it's just a replacement of an object and not having an object, but it's still the same movement, and you kind of feel the same when it's happening. But also, like, with the knife, obviously you're scared, but, like, it's just, like, it's weird. It's weird. And, you know, having that extra little spice with, like, the penetrating part. I feel like I'm OJ in that video, like the I don't know. Having that extra little spice of the penetration part of it all. I think with the caressing of the face a little bit, it's just a little sexual. I don't know. It's like it's an intimate thing that you would do with someone that you really got to know. Like, you don't just go around touching people's faces. So replacing that with something more sinister, more evil is just like a little play on the whole intimacy part of sex, you know, that like you were intimate with someone, so now I'm gonna be intimate with your face with a knife. Sex equals death. Don't forget it. Michael, he's trying to stab Lori so bad. He wants to stab that girl so bad because she doesn't want to have sex. Michael kind of wants to have sex, but also he hates sex, so he needs to penetrate. He needs to get in. He needs to get in there, and Lori won't let him get in there, so then he has to stab her because it's the only way that he can get in there, but also she doesn't want him to stab her, obviously. So, like, it's still that cat and mouse game of chasing, the chase of it all, the chase of the virgin, the chase of the woman, the powerful woman that can't be tamed, the tomboy, the chase of putting a woman in her place and penetrating her so that she shuts the fuck up. That's what this means. That's what this means. In Michael's case. Okay? For Billy, I don't know. He's like, there's a lot of things with Billy, and I could like make a whole video about Billy just because there's like so much to unpack there. But I feel like in terms of the knife, like I said, it's kind of like the extra, the sprinkles, the cherry on top, if you will, of the whole ruse with Sydney, because, you know, he feels like he needs to get his revenge on Sydney by beating her sexually because she said no more, so he had to best her with that. He had to have sex with her so that he won the chase. He won the race of having sex. But now he also needs to win the chase of penetrating her in a different way because he needs that revenge. But also just the way that he just like stabs Stu. It's very slow, you know, very like intimate even. Which, like I said, there's a lot to unpack with Billy. There's a lot to unpack there. And I cannot get into all of that. But, you know, that whole, like, thing of them stabbing each other, you know, it was pretty intimate. This discussion has been had about the fruitiness of those boys, of those two boys. But that's, like I said, too much to unpack. And then Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy just be doing stuff with those claws. Like, the crotch shot. I mean, the crotch shot. Like, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. But he just was like with the knives. It's again with the knives, like, obviously, but like the use of the knives, the hand movements, it's just like just the crotch shot. I mean, that's all I can really say is the crotch shot. Because, like, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. Why are you putting your hand there? And you're dead. Why are you doing this? I have a lot of questions about that shot. But, I mean, that it just gets my point across that, like, the weapon, the kill of it all was... He literally put his hand in her crotch with knives. I mean, that's kind of just speaks for itself of proving my point here. So, in this new age of horror movies, of this new, like, art house horror film renaissance, I think. These new art housey movies are kind of like taking the slasher and making it so camp that it's like insane, but in a good way. Because if you're gonna do camp, you have to do it good, or else it just is stupid. Having a campy slasher, you have to have a final girl. You just have to. It's part of it all. It's part of the ruse. But instead of making it this like hypersexual thing, now it's just like murder for murder. Like, it's just about the murder. I don't know. Some examples of like recent slashers, Ready or Not, that one is like really good. It's really interesting. It's a really interesting concept because it's not just a murderer going around killing everyone. It's a hide and seek game, and you know, she's the final girl, but she does it on her own, and there's no really sexual aspect of it. It's just literally like a kind of a misogynistic thing, but no like sexual really of it all. But like she just kind of like is a queen. And, you know, taking the final girl trope and making her more into an icon rather than a sexual thing, I think is for the better. In X, specifically, I think they do that in such an interesting way because the setup of the whole movie is that they're at the place where everyone gets killed because they're filming a porno. So off the bat, it's like starting in your face, like these people are having sex, whatever. But Pearl does not kill the kids because they're having sex. It's because she's jealous of their youth. So, and that if she would have done porn, maybe she would have been a star because she has her own little movie called Pearl. But, you know, the sex aspect of it wasn't the conflict. It was the youth of it all. It was that these kids were young and having sex, but, like, it was, like, not they're having sex. It's just like, oh, man, like, I miss when I could do that. And that's why she was so mad at all of them. But, you know, straight out of the gate, they were like, we're filming a fucking porno here. Like, this is what it is. We're having sex, and, like, so be it. Another one that I thought in recent years, Bodies, also didn't really have a sexual aspect to it. It was just like a really campy like slasher, and it was just really fun, but also having a lot of like social commentary in it.
Your parents are upper middle class. No, they're not. Jordan, they are. They teach at a university. It's public.
And like the cast being majority girls, I think also helped like having that final girl trope, but also dismantling the whole like the woman needs to die because she has sex, because like if it's all girls and they're lesbians, but they do have sex, but like if it's majority girls, then like why are the girls gonna kill the girls? If another girl knows another girl's having sex, she's gonna be like, woohoo, good for you. It's always the men that have a problem with it, unless you're like a 40-year-old woman, but these were all teenagers in this movie, so yeah, that's basically all I had. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. Like I said, this is a prop from a movie that I did called Love Bites. So it's a vampire lesbian comedy. If you really want to watch it, I'll send you a link. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this. Yeah, I'll see you later.